Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Clean Cut Meals. Clean Cut Meals are a professional meal prep service and have various plans to suit your specific goals. They change up their menus every week so that you never get bored and can help you stay on track long term. I've been using the lads for nearly a year now. I used them back for my 6 back-to-back marathons in the Sahara Desert, and I've been using them every day for my post-workout meal in the lead up to next year's endurance events. So if you're short on time or looking to get the time back from shopping, cooking, preparing and cleaning up after meals, then I can't recommend them more. To get 20% off your first time order, go to cleancutmeals.ie and enter the podcast code BKF at the checkout. That's BKF as in Brian Keane Fitness at the checkout for 20% off all first time orders. If you have any other questions, just fire the lads over an email. And now on to this week's episode. Cue the music, Tommy. Quick introduction to today's episode with my guest Nathalie Lennon. So Nathalie, not Natalie, because she literally gave out to me like right before we went on air, and you can hear it in like the first 3 seconds that I'm like really emphasizing the Nathalie. She's Nathalie on social media. So she's a personal trainer, fitness blogger and online coach. She's also a former bikini competitor, and she's an expert in the topic of obsession versus passion. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to her on this was it really helped me to understand the viewpoint of obsession versus passion from somebody else, particularly somebody who is very self-aware of when certain passions such as eating a certain way and training a certain way and living a certain way can move into obsession without you realizing it. And I have the belief system of micro imbalance from macro balance, and I have a very obsessive nature, my very, very type A, and it serves me in ways and doesn't in others. So I was very, very curious to talk to Nathalie, and we intentionally did not discuss this topic until we went live on the podcast because I wanted to hear it firsthand and give my viewpoint on it. She makes some amazing points here as somebody that lives it and has been through it, where her life was taken over completely by eating a certain way, living a certain way, training a certain way, and it had become everything, and she identified completely with that way of being and how everything in her life suffered as a result. Her relationships, personal and romantic, business, just life in general. And as someone that has been through that area, particularly the competitive side, and again, personally speaking, from someone with an obsessive tendencies towards things, it is a great episode for making you see it from a different angle and being very, very self-aware and just catching some of that awareness that may be going on and some of those stories you may be telling yourself that you're doing it for the greater good, but not to let other things in your life suffer as a result. So if you've ever been obsessive about training or eating or whatever, being single, being in a relationship, we talked on that area as well, it can be worth pulling you back, because when you start making decisions emotionally, which is what can happen when you're letting obsession drive you versus letting your passion drive you, and you're not being rational on the decisions you're making, it can really have a negative effect on other areas of your life. So loved this episode. Really made me think on it in a different angle. So if you're not checking out Nathalie on social media, definitely go check her out at the end of this episode. And if you are following her, you already know how much value she's putting out there with her message. She's big on her mess becomes her message, so she's living that now. So definitely go check out her stuff after that. So without further ado, I hope you enjoyed today's episode with my guest Nathalie Lennon.
You're listening to the Brian Keane Fitness Podcast, where Irish fitness entrepreneur Brian Keane answers your questions and interviews leaders in the world of fitness, health, mindset, and natural wellness. Come join the fun.
Hey everybody, I'm joined today by my guest Nathalie Lennon. Before we went on air, Nathalie was telling me how to say her name properly. So for the first time, Nathalie. Nathalie is a social media as Nathalie _ on Instagram, personal trainer, fitness blogger, online coach. Nathalie, I've done a little bit in the introduction more about you and your background, your obsession versus passion, etc. But tell everybody listening a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I am based in Wicklow, Carlow, personal trainer and online coach, like you were saying. Right now I'm working about kind of 2 days in the gym with clients. I'm building my online client base a lot more. And over the past few months, kind of tiptoed into this influencer world of fitness with my social media account growing. So my Instagram, if you haven't checked it out, it's Nat_Tilly, Tilly. And this started off as being just my own personal accountability kind of diary collectible of photos when I was in college, and that was my name on Instagram just when I couldn't find a handle to use, and I've never changed it. And ever since I started it kind of 4 or 5 years ago, it's just grown and grown because I started, like most people, getting a bit of an interest in fitness, tracking my journey, trying to find like-minded people, became a personal trainer, and the whole journey's been there ever since. So a lot of people are intrigued by, I think, my story and what I share here and my own tips and tricks, as well as then trying to use it a little bit as a coaching tool and help others better their lifestyle as well. Maybe take a different route to the routes I went down that I'm sure we're going to get into here. And then going way into my background, it's actually not what I studied in college. Like we were saying before we came on here, I actually studied earth science, which is half geology, half geography. But upon finishing my degree in college in Trinity, I think I then realised what my true passion really was and started to chase that. So if you're listening to this now and you have an idea of what your passion is and it's not what you're focusing on, you're probably not going to settle until you focus on that a little bit, so don't be afraid to.
Yeah, we had this conversation before we went on air, just we had a quick coffee before the podcast, and you were speaking on your background in earth science and how fitness has been your passion, and health, not so much sport, which is, you know, sometimes people label kind of sport and health and fitness all together. They're not necessarily. What got you into fitness first?
I think like most young girls when they're in college, you just want to get a little bit healthier and a little bit fitter, and start to look after your body after maybe the first 2 years in college where you destroy it a small bit.
Is that what happened to you? Did you have...
Definitely, that's what happened to me. I always kept up a small bit of like running and dancing and enjoyed that because it was just it was a bit of a headspace. It was like time away from study, and it was also socializing when I was like on the hip hop crew and stuff in college. But then coming into my final year, I said no, okay. I felt like for the first time ever my body had kind of gone just that little bit further than I had ever let it before.
In what sense?
In sense of not being as fit as I was.
Yeah.
There's less time to, you know, kind of dance and run when you are coming into your final year, and there's less time to focus on nutrition. I never really had to think about it before, but it was starting to catch up on me, the fact that I wasn't moving as much or eating as well, you know, brain fog, couldn't concentrate for that long. So that's how I first got into it, and I started off doing just a workout guide online, and some of your listeners may have heard of that. It's called BBG, which stood for Bikini Body Guide, and that's run by Kayla Itzines. There's a huge online community for anyone who does these guides, because there's ladies and some guys all over the world that just use the hashtag BBG or BBG community, like many of these online guides. So through that, I connected with so many other people doing it, which really kept me accountable and pushed me to kind of continue with it, because you find other girls that are also on the same week of the guide as you. And then like anyone...
Was that your first introduction to weight training?
That was my very first introduction. And that was more plyometrics, which is a lot of body weight exercises and maybe minimal weight dumbbells and kettlebells. And then like anyone, once you start to see some progress and you start to feel the benefits, then I got really intrigued more into fitness and weight training. So I think you can definitely make, as you know, fantastic progress doing just body weight exercises and HIIT exercises at home. But when you want to really become better at something, then you become so passionate about it, you want to take it to the next level. So that's when I got into weight training. I got some advice from friends at the time as to what to do. Local gym gave me a little plan. And then it wasn't long after that I decided I can't settle in doing geography and geology. I need to chase my passion here in health and fitness, and became a qualified personal trainer then. And it's just kind of grown ever since. Yeah. And
that kind of time span from when you started weight training first, because you went down the competing route then. Talk us through what was kind of the process of, right, I'm doing weight training now, to I'm going to do a show, to where you are now. What was that kind of timeline like?
So So I guess that timeline, it also crosses into what we're going to discuss here a lot, which is the whole kind of passion versus obsession, and how that can happen. And then if you do feel like passions are becoming an obsession, trying to get that back again.
Yeah.
So that timeline, that's exactly what happened, and that process was kind of transversed into this timeline. So I mean, I finished college back in 2015.
Yeah.
And it was October 2016 that I decided to do a physique show, so a bikini competition, with the RIBBF in Limerick at the time. So I don't know how much of stepping into kind of passion and obsession we want to go into right now, but basically I was extremely passionate about weightlifting at the time, and I started to see my body progress a lot more when I started introducing barbells and heavy weights. And I also kind of surrounded myself by a lot more of a competitive environment on my social media. And I think a lot of what you become passionate about is down to the environment that you place yourself in. And that just doesn't have to be just physically and the gym that you go to and the people you're surrounded by, but also on your social media. I think that has a huge part to play in whether your passion will become maybe healthy or unhealthy. But then so I continued to I guess want to better my body, for use of maybe the right or wrong words, and just wanted to challenge myself as much as I could, because I became extremely competitive with myself, and also comparisons. I think we'll go back and touch on these a bit when we just dive into the topic of obsession a little bit more. So it was October 2016 I done the physique show, which was a wonderful experience, and one that you could not have talked me out of at the time.
Yeah, we had this discussion that every once in a while, even though from the outside to friends and family or inner circle people, they're like, maybe that's not the best thing for you right now. When you make a decision on something that's very difficult, if you have an itch to scratch, you have to kind of scratch that itch, or you end up fighting against everybody else. And that's where a lot of people can disconnect in that world, where it's easy to not take and put everyone down as negative or haters, be like, oh, they don't get it, they don't understand, and they may see it from a different vantage point. But if you have an itch to do something, you have to do it.
Exactly.
You know, sorry, just to
no, you're dead right.
The reason I want to talk on this is because it grounds what we're going to talk on in the obsession, the passion, because when you get and you're very type A, you know, we've spoken about this in the past, similar to myself, in that go, hit a goal, set a target, right, next, set a goal, hit a target, next. And that can sometimes be beneficial, but it's just going to ground what we're going to talk about in the passion versus obsession, because it talked about weight training to physique and beyond. So talk us through first show, great experience, what happened during, after.
During, after. Okay, so I actually done 2 shows in the 2 weeks, and I didn't really focus on the first one because I done that one in Dublin. That was NABA, was the federation at the time, and that was really just me getting a feel for the stage, making sure I wasn't going to fall over in the shoes. I was shaking like an absolute chicken when I stepped on the stage, and I think you could see that. Anyone there was like, is she going to fall over? Is she okay? But that just gave me a bit of grounding as for what to expect at the second show. So that was a 2-week period. During, I mean, the few weeks coming up to it, the 2 weeks in between the two, it was hard. Anyone who has ever pushed their body to those limits knows that it's going to be a physically and mental tough journey. Yeah. But like you were saying, I think it does come down to personality types, and being that type A trait, you have no problem taking it on because you're just that determined to do it. I mean, you set the goal, you're just going to reach that goal no matter what, and no one's going to talk you out of it. No matter how hard it gets, you're going to get through it, which is in a way fantastic because it builds a serious amount of character, and you know just how much you're capable of doing when you put your mind to something. So fantastic experience, and genuinely when I stood on the stage, I was so proud of myself at the time for pushing my body that much. Now looking back, I can tell you I don't know if I would agree with it as much. I don't think I would be as proud of myself now, because at the time I was definitely had blinders on, was in a little bit of a tunnel vision mode, and I wasn't really letting anyone from the outside come in ever. I was completely on my own. So in the few weeks after,
was that conscious at the time, or is that just in hindsight looking back?
half and half.
Okay.
It was slightly in my mind at the time, but I think when you are so determined on a certain goal, and now stepping into maybe what we will be touching on more, like you're obsessing about something, you become a little bit defensive about what you're doing. So as much as I could see that I possibly was alienating myself, I was justifying all these things because the obsession was okay. So it was justifying the fact that I wanted to be on my own doing this, and the fact that I was eating on my own, the fact that I was saying no to just so I could get this goal. I was justifying it all, whereas in hindsight, looking back, I don't think that they should have been justified as much.
Yeah.
But I think every competitor, and maybe you can relate to that, having competed in the past as well, at the time, that's all completely okay because it's getting you to where you want to be.
Yeah, well, it's funny because there's a very fine line between obsession and being addicted to something, because
absolutely, yeah,
you're reinforcing the behavior by, when you're like, well, I'm going to get my meals in regardless of what I have to do, I'm going to get my training session regardless of what else suffers, personal relationships or job, etc., and you get that workout done, or you get that meal, and you're like, okay, that's one step closer to the goal, and it reinforces that back to you that, well, what I'm doing is right.
Yeah.
And it's not whether it's right or wrong, but it's not being able to take a wider perspective. And we spoke about this very, very briefly off air, that what happens sometimes is you get so tunnel visioned and blinders on, and I get this. It's something that I have to work on because it's not my natural go-to method. I don't naturally step out and look at it from what I like to picture is like a plane, that if you're 3,500 feet in the sky, you can look down and see everything below you, and sometimes you just need to step out of your life and be like, okay, what's going on all around here? Because it's very easy to get so focused and obsessed about, and particularly something you're passionate about, and something that's giving you a positive reinforcement or a positive feedback loop, because you train, you feel better, and then you eat well, you feel better, and it just gets reinforced, sometimes at the expense of other things. Because it's funny, because your mess becomes your message. We spoke about this the first time we met.
I stole that quote on you on a poster too there.
Yeah, take it, it's yours. But it's funny because when I competed, coming off the back of that, and it's not something I speak on that often in the podcast, because 2015 was my last show.
Yeah.
I did the Worlds in Las Vegas, and that was my last show. Holly was only a few months born, and then after that I was like, okay, I'm done. I was like, this isn't conducive to who I want to be anymore. But out of that, I built my 4 quadrants: my health, wealth, love and fulfillment, that I score out of 10. Like every month I come back and go, right, my health, my wealth, my love, my fulfillment. That's my 3,500 in the sky wide angle view. And it's born out of the tunnel vision that came with competing. So there are, anyone that's listening, and there'll be people listening that have competed, there'll be people that are thinking about it, and there'll be people that will never ever go down that route. But everybody has something that they get focused or tunnel visioned on, whether it's work, whether it's family. It's just being aware to not let it come at the deterioration of other aspects of your life.
Yeah.
When you were competing and you came out, and you can obviously have that hindsight now looking back, how long did it take for you to realize that that lifestyle or that way of being and the way you were showing up wasn't supporting you in other areas? Was it instantly when the show finished? Was it several months on? Or is it only in the last while it started to realize?
So really great points that you made there. And just one thing to touch on just before I answer that question, when you were talking about that positive feedback loop, I think that's something that everyone should really be aware of when it comes to, like, say, passions and obsessions. To be the best at anything, there's going to be a degree of obsession that's necessary, but there's a degree of a kind of a healthy, passionate obsession, and then that becoming an unhealthy, addictive obsession. And I think they're the two different. Did you cross into that? Oh, I've crossed back and forth, I'd say 2 or 3 times over the past 4 years. Yeah. So when I finished competing, I definitely was, I'd say, in that unhealthy, addictive obsession place with blinders on. It was pretty much, I'd say, in the 2 or 3 weeks after, because I learned so much about myself at the time, but also so much about that world, that I would say I crossed back over to passion as quick as I could. Yeah. I just realised how consuming that world was. And that's not to say that, we both know a lot of really respectable competitors that are not by any means completely self-obsessed or self-focused. But it's for most, I think, very hard not to become that way.
Yeah.
But I do know a lot of people that do it fantastically. I think then for myself, so when I finished competing, what happened for me next was I went down into a route of bulking.
Yeah.
But this is where I think I found it very hard to step back from that unhealthy, addictive route into that healthy, passion. Was I bulking because it was just the done thing to do? You finish your show, you're determined, you've ticked that box, what's next? I'll do a bulk, gain more muscle, build a better body. Again, using that sentence not because I think it's a good choice of words, but because at the time that's where my mind was.
Yeah.
So that I could come back a better package. And now I'm not saying a better package for the stage, and I also don't think that anyone ever needs to think that they're not a good enough package as they are, because that is an obsessive way of thinking that you're not good enough right now, because you are. You may have things that you want to better, but that doesn't mean that you're not brilliant just as you are right now. Just to put that out there as well.
It's an interesting concept, just to kind of piggyback just before we continue on that, because there's a very fine line between being happy with where you are and then trying to hit a goal. And one of the things I just want to pull out of that is, because we slightly differ on that, because I'm on the high end of, right, I'm not good enough here, I need to be better. And that serves me in lots of areas of my life. It doesn't serve me in others, and I try and not do it in personal relationships. But it's the comparison against yourself versus the comparison of the stage, or the comparison of the Joneses next door, or the comparison of the person in your workplace. It's about, well, am I better than what I was starting off? Yeah. And one of my biggest issues that I have, that I just want to pull out there, because a lot of people will resonate, is comparison is the thief of joy. Comparing against other Instagram people, where you go on to social media, or you go on to competing is a good example of this, because you're comparing your bar moves. Yeah. One of the things I've spoken about in the past was the most unhappiest I ever was with the way I looked was when I was at my biggest and at my leanest. Yeah. When I was, because I was a professional fitness model, I came 8th in the world in Las Vegas, and I did well in that region, and I was the biggest and leanest I ever was, but I was the most unhappiest with the way I looked. It was the only time in my life really when I didn't like the reflection in the mirror, because my bar moved, because I was comparing against the guys that came 7th, 6th, 5th, and it moves. Yeah. And everybody to a degree does that. Not everybody, I'm generalizing, but when you go on to social media, you're looking at your photos and going, man, I wish I looked like Nathalie. Or you're going on mine, going, oh, I wish I looked like Brian, or I wish I looked like insert name here on, X girl or Y guy. And that's not the right question. The right question is, am I better than what I was a week ago? Am I better than what I was a month ago? Yeah. Am I better than what I was a year ago? Because that's tangible. You can get better. If the answer is no, you need to make a decision, is what you're doing and are your actions not mapping to your ambition? Yeah. Because if you're not, cool, own that and be like, right, I actually haven't got in shape now because I've been busy with my kids, or I've been busy at work. That's cool, but own it. Compare against yourself. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to kind of pull on that because we spoke on it. Yeah, when you went down the bulking route after the show, and it was the kind of the done thing to do, what was your kind of self-image towards yourself at that time? Because coming off the back of that, it can be very difficult. I know it was for me. What was your self-image like? Were you okay with the reflection? Did you bulk because you're like, right, I'm not happy with the way I look, or I need to be a better package for stage? Yeah. What did that look like? What did the inner dialogue look like?
The inner dialogue, I couldn't really manage to shake myself out of that unhealthy obsessive patch. And I definitely agree with you in saying that, like, to be good at anything or to achieve any goals, you have to continuously ask yourself, am I getting better? Yeah. But I was asking myself, and I think maybe a lot of people out there, and I know a lot of my following on Instagram, because they've reached out to me because I've shared my feelings and my story, would do the same way. In asking yourself, are you getting better? You need to look at yourself as a whole package and not just your reflection getting better. I mean, if you're getting better, it needs to be mentally, physically, towards others, towards yourself. And I think that's what you mean in terms of it. It's a question you have to keep on asking yourself, but you need to look at it as a whole package and not just a singular way, in the way I had maybe done when I finished competing. In the sense,
do you mean in the sense of physically. The way, physically, this is the way I look. Yeah. This is my success metric.
Exactly. So I stepped out of competing, and although I wanted to better myself, because say at the time, thoughts running through my head was like, oh, I'm too small, I'm not as big as she was. Comparison is the thief of joy. I was comparing myself to other people. I didn't like the idea of standing on stage and feeling like a piece of bacon. It was just kind of literally, you just felt like you worked so hard to get there, but you're beside all these other people and no one really cares except for you as to where you get first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So I knew that that wasn't something I wanted to do again. But at the same time, competing for me did put me into an unhealthy mental space for body image. So I bettered myself, like insert, the little bunny ears here, to build a better physique. But I didn't better myself in terms of looking at myself as a whole package, looking at how I was treating my family, my friends, my business, my clients, my future. I became very tunnel vision on just the obsession at the time, which was body image and numbers. Like, that's a huge part that I've spoken about in terms of my passion versus obsession. Macros. I justified what I was doing in that I was getting healthier because I was gaining weight, I was gaining body fat, but I was still extremely obsessed with the process and with numbers, hitting my macros, hitting my daily calories, my daily amount of carbs, proteins, 500 grams of carbs. Like, I was having that much and it was a lot of food. It wasn't necessarily food restriction that was a problem, it was just numbers. And I think that's where, when you have a passion, a healthy obsession versus an addictive obsession, you need to be careful in how you share things online. It may be a passion for you, but that may be extremely triggering for someone else with a different personality type. Like tracking macros, I try not to speak about that as much on my Instagram now, even though I do it with a lot of clients because it works very well for them. I'm sure you know the same. But if someone is that obsessive personality type, or they are in a place of unhealthy obsession and in an addictive way, tracking macros may not be right for them, but the way you share it on social media may be triggering for them, and then they think it's okay. So I think that's where, as a coach, if you've ever been in a place of an unhealthy obsession, you step back from it. You need to be very careful in how you filter your social media and how you share things, because as a coach, we want to be the best at what we do, so we will have obsessive behaviors there, and it's really important to make sure that they don't transverse into other people's lives in an addictive, unhealthy way. So that's something that I've kind of really been able to step back, like you were saying, like up in that plane, looking down at how I'm doing everything online and how I'm spreading my message. If I go back down to maybe a year and a half ago, I wasn't able to get up there into that plane. I couldn't see it from the sky and I was stuck down on the ground. And in the way I was sharing my message, I think it was just completely justifying how I was obsessing over things and helping others who were following me that were also obsessive justify what they were doing. It's a vicious cycle. So I went in to go back a little bit, after my competition, bulked, gained back weight, never quite stepped back into the healthy passion side of things. I decided to then do a mini cut for a photo shoot. I didn't want to stand on stage to be put beside a bunch of other people to justify my worth, because that's what it felt like. I knew something wasn't right with that, so I tried to justify it in a different way. I done a mini cut for a photo shoot, and I have to say it was a really good experience, and I loved having these photos to have in time years to come. And that was just for me. I wasn't comparing it to anyone else, but I was still comparing quite heavily to myself, to my past self, and in the back of my mind wondering, how can I be better, but still stuck on the ground and not up in that plane, looking down at the whole package as to how I could be a better person rather than a better physical reflection. So
something I'm going to pull out here, just because I'm curious, because everyone's journey is so individual and unique. You obviously made that switch where you started to look at it more holistically. And again, I remember mine, where it was a bit more gradual, where I'm like, right, this part of my life is suffering. I'm doing really well in fitness, but I'm not helping serve more people. And then I got my business right. And then I was like, oh, well, you know what, my mental health could be a little bit stronger, even though I'm physically in shape. Then I started to get that right. And then personal relationships and all the other things that came with it. And it was kind of a gradual process for me. Was yours, because you're very much out the other side of it now, on that mess becoming your message, was yours gradual, or was it like get a moment, like something happened where you went, right, this isn't working anymore. I need to take a more holistic approach and work on my mindset, work on my business, work on my clients and serving more people. What did that look like? Was it gradual for you, or was it just a trigger moment? Did one thing happen where you're like, okay, I'm done? Because I know it's different for each person.
It was a trigger moment. It was a penny dropping moment. That's one thing that I learned in school. I never forgot. I could literally see the penny drop in my mind. One morning I woke up and I went, okay, this is it. So after the photo shoot, I quit. Every coach needs a coach by times, but I stopped working with my coach, and I decided to, just work on things myself. I was like, okay, that's it. I was up in that plane as much as I thought I was, looking down, being like, we need to step out. We need to make this more of a lifestyle. It's not about continuously bettering my physique. It's about bettering things as a whole and getting back to looking at this lifestyle as being a passion. But I struggled for quite a few weeks after the photo shoot until that penny dropped. I struggled to gain back the weight, not because I was like restricting and under eating. I was just so focused on numbers. Just obsessive passion versus obsession. I wasn't back to passion yet. I was completely obsessive. Obsessing over continuously going 24/7 because on social media that's what other personal trainers do. Obsessing over where I was going to be in 5 years' time because everyone kept on asking me. Obsessing over what my next goal was, because like that, we are the type of people to have a goal, and I didn't have a next goal because I knew the last 2, 3 weren't very healthy. They weren't about passion. It was about obsessions. Like, what can my next goal be that's going to be healthy? How can I spread a healthier message? I was starting to see how everything that I've been doing for the last 2 years, I felt like I was promoting an unhealthy image, whereas at the time I thought it was healthy. And then so I really struggled to gain back weight because I brought my calories up, obsessing over them, but I was hell-bent on having 2,300 calories a day, and that was it. But I was an extremely active person, and that wasn't enough for me. But at the same time, I was afraid to go over it. I kept on telling myself we can fix things later, yada yada yada. One morning I woke up and I looked in the mirror, and it's a progress picture that I've shared quite a few times. I've got a lot of girls reach out to me asking me how I've overcome anorexia, which I have never suffered from. I'm a huge foodie. I was always a foodie. I just became obsessed with numbers, what I could fit into those numbers. So I reached kind of, I think, my most unhealthy image ever. And I stood there and I took that picture and I said, this is it. This is the new before. There's no, I'm never coming back to this point ever again. The penny dropped that morning and I said, I'm getting myself back on track. I'm getting myself back into a passion. I'm staying up in that airplane in the sky. I'm viewing this as a whole package. This obsession is leaving me and I'm getting back into a passionate lifestyle. And I'm going to share that journey still. And then when I feel like I'm fully back into that passionate zone, because I know I will be, I'm going to speak about it a lot more. So I guess that's what I'm doing now. And in the meantime, I mean, I don't really track macros anymore since. Like, weight's fluctuated up and down. I'm focusing on getting stronger. I've taken up running and shared this whole idea of passion versus obsession and putting it out there, hoping that, like, when people listen to this and maybe some more fine lines between passion versus obsession that we'll touch on, that maybe they can help someone else if they think they're doing the same thing. Because if you know someone who's in an obsessive place, trust me, they're not going to want your help. But you may be able to maybe use the points that we touch on to help them in ways. Or if you think maybe you're stuck in an obsessive place, that maybe you can use my story or your story, Brian, to get you out of there, or maybe to prevent you ever doing that. So I think that's why I'm so passionate now about sharing that message, because having shared my story, I've had hundreds, if not thousands, of people reach out to me.
Your social media has exploded over the last,
it's crazy over the past few years. Crazy. But it's really opened my eyes to how many people actually suffer in silence when it comes to fitness and obsession. Because
it's burying your head in the sand. It's the easy option, because it's very, I don't know, is easy the right word, but you can bury your head and just stay so focused on hitting the number, hitting the macros, hitting the weight, hitting the whatever it is that you're trying to hit, and block everybody else out and everything else out.
And the thing is, with social media, when you do that, it's all justified. So when you put up, like, you know, your progress picture, or, you know, you might be looking a little bit too lean, like I definitely was in a lot of my photos for too long, or you continuously better yourself. People surround their social media with the type of, if it is an obsession, that they want to continue to stay within.
Yeah.
So although you might be posting something that really isn't that healthy or passionate, you're getting support for it.
Yeah.
You're getting attention, you're getting positive feedback, and you feel like you're becoming better because of what you've posted, which really might not be that passionate, but your following are probably surrounding themselves in that place of obsession, and they're happy and they're going to support you. So you're getting all the support for something that actually probably isn't that wonderful, but that messes with your head, because then you think you need to keep on doing that to continue to get that attention and that like positive feedback, because it makes you feel better, and it becomes this like loop then, like this kind of
with the negative feedback.
Yeah, that you need to stay within that to continue to get the appreciation and your self-worth and evaluation.
Well, they come off the metrics of social media. Like
it just completely changes. And it shouldn't, but this is what happens.
But this is what happens. That there's that danger of social media, and I have a huge love-hate with social media. Like it's the modern day marketing, amazing way to build up platforms and launch a business and get your message out there and make the world a better place because you're here. It's an amazing thing, but it's a catch-22.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's the consistent and constant comparison that you can, and the example I always use is people that have had, you know, a decent day, they're on their way home from work and they see a photo of a guy and a girl and they're like, oh fuck, why haven't I got a relationship? Or they see someone with, you know, amazing glutes or great abs and they're like, why don't I look like that? And then instantly their mood and state changes into this negative place where it's like, why don't I have that? And there's this constant feeling of lack. And social media can promote that. You got to be so careful. This is why I'm so big on audit who you follow.
Absolutely.
Like I tell people, I tell people to unfollow me all the time. I'm like, if I'm not supporting you, click the unfollow. Like, you know, do that. If my content isn't helping you and serving you, making you become a better version of you, unfollow me. But you need to, if you're doing that, you need to hold everybody else to that standard, because otherwise, what you put into your mind, that's going to dictate the way you feel. And one of the, and I'm sure you may be able to resonate with this, when I got out of the competing world first and out of professional fitness modeling first, you were getting so much traffic, say likes and comments for an ab photo or whatever it is, or a glute photo in a girl's case. And then you start to put the way you feel into the metrics and the numbers that are coming back off that photo. And if anyone listening to this has ever done that, where you put up a photo and you're like, why didn't that get more likes? Or you put up a photo and go, oh, that got a lot of likes, I'll do that again. I'll put up another photo of this car or my house or my ass in a bikini or my abs in a towel or whatever. Like, go do your thing. Like, again, each to their own. And I never really question what somebody does, but the why interests me. Like one of the things, whatever it is people do, I'm like, cool, do your thing. But why are you doing what you do? Like that's interesting. Yeah. Like that's a hard question to ask. And when you're posting those photos or you're comparing yourself, why are you doing that? Why are you feeling insecure about yourself? And if that's the case, maybe it's a case of just cutting it. Like I have a rule on my social media. I don't go on social media in the evenings. I've got a 2-3 hour block before bed. Don't go on it. It's done. My phone is down. There's a couple of people who can reach me by text. That's it. And my first 2 hours in the morning when I'm doing creative work, I don't touch my social media, because there are times that I'm either being creative or I'm trying to switch down. I'm trying to power up or power down. And I don't use it outside of those times, which makes it way easier to engage in those times in, because I'm really good at replying to DMs, messaging people, even though they can get flooded, you know, the same thing. Yeah. But it's batching those replies and getting back to people. Talk me through the way you put it, your social media now has changed. It's very, very obvious. It's gone from competitor, competing, to way more holistic. Yeah. You're constantly striving to become a better version. Is there anything that you do, either morning routines or daily routines, that reinforce that positive self-image of yourself for example, I use my social media blocks where I don't go on it in the morning. I do my creative. I don't go on it in the evening. I've got my running that I do every day because I hate to run. Like, I've got my foundation pillars of, quote unquote, foundation pillars of success for me.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you do, or any routines or strategies that you're like, this really works for me? I don't know what they may look like, but is there anything that you're like, yeah, I put a lot of my foundational success on the way I feel down to these routines? Is there anything like that for you?
Do you know, it's only lately that I'm starting to bring more routines to the fore, because I think I've completely changed my routines and I'm still changing these things. Lately, again, I've taken back up some more running. So that has actually become a little bit of a routine for me. Like, once a week, I need to get out for a run because it's a headspace. And again, it's not about, you know, doing it for just the physical benefits or to lose fat anymore. It's about headspace and performance and fresh air and getting just time to think. I am trying a lot more to go on social media less in the evenings, because for me personally, at nighttime, that's when I will generally start to let a lot more negative thoughts creep in, and I try my best not to, but it's just the type of person I am.
Yeah, that's when they come.
Yeah. And that's when if you go on social media, you start comparing yourself to everyone else, and you go to bed going, damn, why am I not with him, or like in that shape, or doing this or doing that. So I have tried to not go on social media a lot more in the evenings. But I think just to keep my mind where it's at right now, I go back to kind of like that one question, like in every decision that I make in every day, why am I doing what I'm doing? And I think that's something that everyone should ask themselves. And it's not just like we said that there in terms of social media. Why are you posting what you're posting? Is it just to get likes? Like, I was always that person that would post my morning abs, or if I had abs, I was happy to show them. Whereas now I'm nearly embarrassed to show them because I'm afraid of how it's going to trigger someone else if I post a picture looking well. Not to say that I look well or that I always will, but you know what I mean by that. But yeah, I come back to always asking myself, why am I doing what I'm doing? And hopefully before I do it, so that then maybe I won't do it if I think it is something that will be negative in any way or not better me as a whole package in any way. And I come back to kind of looking at when I kind of sat down one day and I dived into this whole passion versus obsession idea, and how I could stay in the like passionate side of things and make sure that my obsession maybe was healthy. Because I do think, looking at the idea of passion versus obsession, that obsessions are nearly always negative. I mean, if you look up the definitions of obsession in the dictionary, there's not one that isn't slightly negative. Yeah. It's about continuously having thoughts intrude your mind, which is quite a negative word. It's about continuously doing a repetitive action against your own will. Whereas if you look at the definition of passion, it's a barely controllable emotion or something like that. And I think that's a really nice way to look at it. So I think if you have a passionate obsession, that sounds okay. But then if it's an addictive obsession, that's bad. So I kind of sat myself down and I looked at the different fine lines in here. And every week or two, I'll sit down and I'll kind of go, okay, am I on the right side of these lines? Making sure I'm not crossing back over at all. Because I think for too long, I spent my time tiptoeing back and forth, kind of justifying things. So doing that, I kind of look to see, okay, in my decision making, this is one huge thing. Am I just making this decision to reduce anxiety? So I think if someone's faced with a decision, and if it's maybe one that they have to make that's based on the idea of their obsession or what they're doing, if you suffer from an obsession, and it generally causes you to repeat actions. And this is where, you know, there's a passion. Okay, we go to the gym.
And just to clarify before you, I don't want to break your pattern, because there's people listening that will have an obsession with food, which is a big one as well.
That as well.
So just to give a little bit of a wider angle contextualization as you're speaking.
It could be anything.
It could be anything. Just I want to clarify, this isn't necessarily fitness in the gym. Continue with that.
Really good point to make. It could be food, it could be the gym, it could be cooking, you could be obsessed with baking, it could be knitting, it could be anything, I don't know. But whatever it is, it causes you to it gives you a thought, okay? And if you maybe start to feel anxiety because of this thought, whatever it is, it then causes you to do a certain action. Okay, and I'm not going to say what these actions are, because this could be anything right now. And then that action, you do it because it lowers the anxiety that these thoughts gave you. Okay, so this is a small loop. You're going thoughts, reduce thoughts, anxiety. action, and that action reduces the anxiety. So you justify this action because, okay, it's reduced your anxiety and you feel a little bit better again. But then the thoughts creep back in. Anxiety, action, reduce anxiety. And it's a cycle that keeps on going. For example, let's say food. So the thought was restricting what I'm eating today because you're afraid. This is the anxiety part, that you're going to gain fat. So you restrict what you're eating. And then you feel good about the fact that you've restricted yourself that much. But then the thought comes back the next day, and that keeps on going. And maybe that's an example of how you might enter into an eating disorder. Like it's this cycle that happens. So that is one thing. I sit down and I kind of go, okay, am I making this decision because I just want to reduce anxiety because of a healthy or an unhealthy reason? And if it's an anxiety that I can face and I don't need to do this action just to reduce anxiety, then that's what I'll do. I'll let that anxiety in and I'll open up to it, and then it's not there in the future because I've bet that thought. Do you know what I mean?
Really interesting way you put it. Because I haven't heard it worded that way. And even kind of thoughts were triggered in my own mind because I've done that.
Yeah, it's funny when you put it that way.
The thought comes into your head. For me, I used to have it when I used to work out, where I thought anxiety would enter my head. And
it's working a big one for exercise obsession. That's
huge. It's a band-aid. I spoke about it in the mindset section of my book, that exercise is an incredible way to feel better, improve your health, but just make sure it's not a plaster or a band-aid over a problem or anxiety you're trying to get away from. And I did it for years, where if I had an issue with, I had a big thing with conflict avoidance. It's something that I try and do every day. I nip things very, very early with people, because conflict avoidance is something that I would naturally go to. I would just avoid the conflict. If somebody said something I didn't like, I would just hold it in. I'd say nothing, and I would avoid it completely. And then mountains grow into molehills. And then I'm a big fan of the thought process that if you don't deal with the problem when it's small enough to be dealt with, you deserve to deal with the fuck up that comes when it grows. And that conflict it's a thought philosophy that serves me now. But that conflict avoidance, I used to numb out with the gym, and I would go to the gym because
I relate to you there, because I've done the very same.
and it never fixed, because it came back the next day. And you're just putting a band-aid over what the real problem was. For me, it was always, if I was going out with somebody or in a relationship and there was a fight or something, I would go to the gym and I just would never deal with the problem. And then the same thing would come back. And then you wonder...
It was a numbing mechanism.
And then 9 months later, 12 months later, 18 months later, you're like, where did that relationship go crap? Because you didn't deal with any of the problems. Yeah. You just numbed out all the way through. Really interesting. I really, really like that.
Yeah. Thought,
action, anxiety, and coming back. What's the source? Like, what's causing the anxiety? You know, that's the real question to ask. Not
stop numbing it out.
Stop numbing it out.
And I've done the same with exercise, with relationships, and that's how many of them went so arseways. And with even family experiences with my friends, loads clients, my business. If I didn't want to address something, I just keep training, not feeling myself well enough, and that's how I went down that route. So it is, when I sat down to put a talk together based on passion versus obsession, that was the one thing that, even as I was writing it, pennies were dropping all over my mind. I was like, this is what I was doing for years. This is what so many girls I follow are doing, and we're all justifying it for each other, and it's not good.
Yeah.
So that's one point that I guess helps me stay now on the right side of things, and continuously asking myself, well, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I doing this action? What's causing it? Do I need to do this? Is it going to be bettering me as a whole package? Second to that, I think when it comes to setting goals, because we are the type that, and a lot of people listening, I'm sure, are the type that wants to continuously set a goal and strive towards it. Making sure that you have a plan post goal, because I think you can get very down afterwards if you don't know, if you're going to do a show, what's your plan afterwards? If you're going to run a marathon, what's your plan afterwards? Because otherwise you're just going to get quite low. You need to set yourself some sort of maybe a progress route, and realize that progress, okay, it's fantastic, but it doesn't always need to go up continuously the same route. Like, both of us have done physique competing, but we realized we didn't want to keep going up that progress ladder. So we now go up relationship ladders, family ladders, running, health, our business. There are other ladders that we realize we don't just have to go up one. And I think that's where, when it comes to progress, you have to realize that it can be in so many areas of your life, and you can't beat yourself up if you're not progressing in just one that you originally thought was what you were going to do, because like your why and why you do what you do, that can change, because your passion is going to change, and that it's okay for that to change. Even if you're mid goal and you decide to change to a different goal because you realize it's healthier, that's okay. Like a passion, a progress addiction versus a progress hope, I think that's something that's really crucial that people sit down and look at from time to time to make sure they stay in the right zone of passion or obsession.
Talk me through that. What do you mean by progress hope versus
progress hope versus progress addiction? So especially when it comes to fitness, and we know that as coaches, you know, you set someone up for, you know, a 6, an 8, a 12-week challenge, and they're hoping for a before and after photo at the end of it, or they have some sort of hope for progress. And generally they get there if they can stick to the plan, which hopefully they can, and as a coach that's what we want them to do. But then I think it's really important to remember, and I think you'll relate to this, or anyone that maybe has gone through a journey of fitness and bettering their reflection will probably relate to, is that when you reach that level of progress, no one can prepare you for how that's going to affect you mentally. And it can really change your why. You can start off saying why you do what you do is to get a little bit healthier and a little bit fitter. When you get to week 12 or week 16, your why kind of changes then, and you become addicted to progress. You're no longer just doing these things because you want to just better your health and fitness like you did at the beginning. You're doing it because, like just taking, say, physique competing as an example, you no longer know how to better yourself without being a better physique. You no longer know how to be a good person unless you are shredded and lean.
Yeah, your self-worth gets tied
your
to...
self-worth, that's another point. I think you sit down, you need to look at where you're getting your self-worth from to make sure you're staying in the right side of passion versus obsession. You need to make sure it's coming from the people you're surrounded by, you know, who you are as a person, and not just how good your workout was or how lean you're feeling today. Self-evaluation is extremely important, along with progress hopes, and not letting that become a progress addiction. Looking at that cycle of thoughts, actions, reduce anxiety. So they're kind of 3 things I always do. Another one would be looking at my thoughts and making sure that they are never distorted in any way. So I feel like when I stepped into more of an obsessive point, again, you'll probably relate to this, maybe a lot of listeners will, my thoughts became distorted in a way that they were becoming extremely defensive. I think a lot of people will relate to that. You know, no, I have to get up and do my workout because that's really good for me, because I'm better than you because I go to the gym every day, and you know, I have to eat this chicken and broccoli because it's way better than your, you know, fish and chips. Yeah.
Well, you feel
because.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm so defensive at what I do because deep down it's really probably an obsession, but I'm just going to be really, you know, defensive and opinionated right now and justify everything. So I think it's making sure that you're not being that way about whatever it is that you are.
Your mind's closed. About. As soon as one of the things that
as soon as a passion becomes an obsession, the mind closes.
Closed. Yeah. Like it's closed off. It's one of the. It's interesting that that's a point you made, because the more self-aware I get, I can tell when my mind is closing off. I can tell when I'm having a conversation with someone. I'm like, oh, your mind's closing now. Stall up a sec. Yeah, and it's again, there's always an argument for sometimes you're better off closing off your mind, and you'll be in a conversation with somebody, you know, tune out the folly, tune out the noise, where it's like, you know what, this information is not going to help me right now, I'm better off just to close it down and go elsewhere. Like, you're in a conversation but you're done. But there's a lot of times when you're like, hold on, this other person may have valuable information that you don't know, and I try and go into every conversation with assume somebody knows something that you don't. And you know, your mind's like a parachute, it's only good when it's open, and when you close it down like that, when you get defensive, it automatically closes, so you can't hear anything else, and that's a bad position to be in. And I do sometimes when I'm listening to, it's why I love talking to people with opposite opinions. I love having conversations with hardcore vegans or hardcore CrossFitters, because I totally get your point. I'm like, it's a great diet, great training program. Do I think it's the best one and everyone should do it? Probably not, but I love talking to those people because it allows me to see stuff, because they've got value systems that are very different to mine. And you can take the nuggets, and I love the Aristotle quote, and I hope I don't butcher it, that a sign of intelligence is to be able to listen to a thought that somebody else has, but not identify or attach to it.
Yes.
And there's a lot of value when you do that. It's just an interesting concept that I wanted to pull on, because there'll be people listening that your mind will shut down. And I've done this in the past when somebody has disconfirming evidence of a belief system that I have. Like if I believe in, everyone should eat whole foods, or everyone should eat vegan food, or everyone should eat paleo, or whatever it is, and somebody has a disconfirming evidence, they're on the opposite side and they believe the complete opposite to me, my mind would shut down. And everything they say from that point forward doesn't go in. And it's a terrible way, because you don't have to agree with everybody. No. Like one of the biggest things that I got into my mind that has served me so much over the last 3-4 years is you don't have to agree with everybody. Like,
and you don't have to please everybody.
You don't have to please everybody. You don't talk to them, have the conversation, because sometimes somebody will be a hardcore paleo believer, and this is the only way you should eat. And if you are like, no, you shouldn't eat any meat, I'm a hardcore vegan, they may have some incredible life philosophies to share with you about a personal relationship that could serve you and move your life forward, but you're closed off because you don't believe in what they say.
You're too defensive about what you're doing.
100%. Yeah. And I think it's really good self-awareness on your part, on anyone's part, to be able to be like, right, your mind's closing off here. Just open it up a little bit. Yeah. And it's just it's providing value. I just wanted to kind of flesh that out. I didn't mean to take over on the point, but just to kind of, there's so much in that. It's a very important thing to be able to identify, I think. One of the things, because I know we're getting kind of short on time, I could talk. I need to start making these episodes 2 hours. Hit me up on DM. Do you want longer podcasts? A couple of things I want to talk on, and hopefully we'll do a part 2 at some stage, and we'll expand on this as your journey continues to grow. I'm going to throw a couple of questions at you, kind of the rapid fire. I know you listen to the podcast, so you know some of them. And these are my favorite. I love these questions, and I try and get them into any interview I do, because it always tells you a little bit more about a person. Even though your area of expertise is obviously health, fitness, passion, obsession, I'm always curious a little bit more about you. When you think of the word successful, besides a family member, who's the first person that comes to mind, and why?
My sister.
Why? Beside a family member. Take away your family member.
Okay, aside from family member. It would probably... Am I allowed to name names?
Yeah.
As our coach?
Yeah.
So, David Young.
I love David.
Really, really successful online business entrepreneur as well. And I guess that's because it's the area I'm going into. I've got to know him really well. I think when I think of successful, he just comes to mind, because it's an area as well that I'm working in. He has built such a business from the ground up all by himself, and he's helped so many people.
He's a great coach.
At the end of the day,
that's
the goal, just help more people. And how can you get that out there? As well as, his family and keeping his relationships and everything else on track. I think that would be answer number 1.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Do you have a favourite movie?
Okay, you're really going to laugh at this one, because it's absolutely nothing mindset related or fitness related, but it's always been my favourite one. It's Happy Feet 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why Happy Feet 2 as opposed to Happy Feet 1?
I just think the music was way better.
Did you see Happy Feet 2 first?
I could have. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, because there's always a bias. But I have this Home Alone conversation with people. I'm like, I'm a Home Alone 2 guy. Tommy's looking at me here and he's going A behind the camera. I'm a Home Alone 2 guy. And people that have seen Home Alone 1, they're like, come on, man. And I'm like, Home Alone 2 I saw first.
Happy Feet 2.
I love it. Favourite podcast?
Favourite podcast?
Not a loaded question. It can be outside of the Brian Keane Fitness podcast. I said this to Tom Martin and he was like, yeah.
Is this a trick question?
Yeah, Tom was like, can I say another podcast?
Oh, well, your podcast channel is amazing. Other ones that I love, the Food Medic. Hazel Wallace. She has 10 episodes out there. They're fantastic. They're really easy to understand. You don't have to be highly up there in terms of health and fitness and nutrition to understand them. Hers are amazing. If I can cheat here and give you a second one.
Yeah.
I also love, I think most people will know of Danny Lennon Sigma Nutrition Radio.
Yeah.
Again, they are just a little bit more complicated. Some of them you do need to have a bit of a background knowledge to be able to take it in. But there are 2 that I really do enjoy listening to. I think they're fantastic.
I love it. And for those of you listening to the podcast, both have been on the show. Danny was on, it was actually quite a while ago since Danny's been on, but if you just search Brian Keane Fitness Podcast, Danny Lennon, great podcast, very heavy on the science. One I always recommend to trainers. A little bit harder for the general public because there's a lot of scientific talk in it. And Hazel's been on recently. Great episode as well. Food Medic, Hazel stuff's incredible.
She's incredible. So really easy to understand.
Breaks it down. Yeah. Breaks it down in a very good,
Yeah.
easily and accessible way.
Another one that is just really quickly a lot easier for people to understand, I think it's Uplift Fit Nutrition. She is a dietitian in training from America. I've only listened to a few of her podcasts, but they were quite easy to understand if anyone wants to have a look at that one.
How do you consume podcasts? Is it workouts? Is it on runs?
Runs lately, yeah, because I just done the half marathon, first time ever. Nothing up there against your standard with running, but podcasts were the main way I would get through that. I usually finish off the last 10 minutes with music then to get me there. Also, when I am driving, I would usually put on podcasts a good bit more.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a quote that you refer to often or live your life by?
As of late, well, one that I always say that some people hate me saying, and I said it, I think 4 times before we came on here, was what's for you won't pass you. What's meant to be will be. Everything happens for a reason. They're kind of all the one quote really put in there together. So that would be 1. 2, I'm completely cheating on these quick fire questions. 2 would be not all that glitters is gold. Because I think that's one thing. It's a very girly way of putting it.
I like that
but,
one.
yeah, it's actually, I have a tattoo. It's a quote in Latin, and that's exactly what it is. And a lot of people always ask me on Instagram what it means. So there you go, if you're wondering. Because I think so many people, and I myself, have put out, you feel the need to put out this image that everything is gold. Life is perfect, life is golden. You know, my life is so much better than yours, which is ridiculous to say, but that's what people feel the pressure to do.
Yeah.
Just remember that not all that glitters is gold. It might not be the case. And then just in relation to passions versus obsession, one that really hit home with a lot of people was saying, and it helped me a lot when I thought about it. I didn't come up with this one or anything, but it was like always thinking about exercising is not healthy, and never thinking about not exercising, or exercising is also not healthy. I hope I didn't screw that up. Did I get that?
How do you mean by that? Explain that.
As in also with like eating, like always thinking about the food that you eat is not healthy, but never thinking about the food that you're consuming is also not healthy.
Yeah.
Okay, so that might explain it a little bit better.
Yeah, I get that.
Like that's kind of what I mean. That it's just the whole idea of passion versus obsession. You need to be aware of all these things. You need to be maybe passionate about them to do well at them. But if you're always thinking about them, you're consumed by thinking about exactly what you're putting into your mouth, exactly how many calories, or exactly what workouts you're going to get in today, then that is not healthy. So it's just remembering to be on the healthy side of things with your thought process.
Yeah, I really, really like that. Something that I regularly talk, I actually had a conversation with one of my best mates, Paul Germany, recently on the podcast about this, was not mindlessly doing things.
Yes.
And asking yourself the question, what am I doing mindlessly? That, you know, am I mindlessly eating, not taking any conscious awareness?
Yeah.
Am I mindlessly swiping on Tinder and not thinking about what I actually truly want? Am I mindlessly just going to the gym and just hopping on a cross trainer?
Mm-hmm.
What are you mindlessly doing? Because when you take conscious control of, oh, well, my actions aren't mapping to my ambition, this is what I want to achieve, but what I'm doing isn't actually going to get me there. It's a very important question that I've started to ask myself more recently is, right, what area you're like, what are you mindlessly doing right now? I think it ties in a lot with, you know...
Exactly. And it goes back to saying, why do you do what you do?
Yeah.
Ask yourself that every time you do something. Why am I doing this? You know, why am I mindlessly eating?
Yeah.
Why do you do what you do? And that, if you keep on asking yourself that, it'll change your life, I think, in a lot of ways for the better.
Yeah, I think they always say that if you ask yourself a question 3 times or more, you'll get the answer. Or ask yourself why 3 times or more. It's like, why am I mindlessly eating? Because you don't know what you want. Why don't you know what you want? Because I'm unhappy. Why are you unhappy? Because I'm in a bad relationship, or I hate my job. Why do you hate your job? Because I don't feel I'm truly, my worth isn't being showed or displayed or whatever it is. And you keep pulling back and asking those questions of why until you figure out the root.
And don't be afraid to sit down and ask yourself why you're doing these things. A lot of people, I think, avoid asking themselves why they're getting up and going to work every day because they're afraid of what really might be the answer there. Don't be afraid to sit down and really evaluate why you do what you do.
Yeah, well, that's it. And it's a case of, it's not right or wrong. No, like what comes back. And sometimes, you know, what comes back is just a little bit more self-awareness on why you're doing what you're doing. And you can change it if you want to change it. And if you decide not to, then it's a conscious choice not to. You're not just mindlessly doing things. Yeah. Last one. If you could go back... And you're still quite young. I know your birthday's in December. 25 in December.
25 in December.
25 in December.
Midlife crisis.
Yeah,
Quarter life crisis.
I had mine.
Could be midlife.
Yeah. if you could go back to your 16, 17 or 18-year-old self, is there any advice you would give, very specific to you, that you would go back knowing what you know now? And it might do with the passion versus obsession. It might be something job related. It might be something, whatever it is. Is there any specific time that you would go back to? Take us to that place. And then what's the advice you'd offer that, Nathalie?
Oh God, I feel like there's a lot of specific times I would go back to.
You can pick one that you think,
yeah,
this is the catalyst that you really could have done with this piece of advice right now.
I think it would probably be when I was in school or college. I suppose there was 2 occasions, and it comes back to comparison being the thief of joy. Comparing my grades to other girls in school, comparing, as well as that, like my looks, my grades, my relationship status, you know, what boys would think of me, where I was on stage for my dancing. I just continuously compared myself to who I thought was the best person out there, or the most popular, or doing the most better. And it would bring me down so many notches, thinking that I could never get there, or I could never get
Is that what
grade.
your self-talk was like?
That's what my self-talk was like. And I remember going home and getting so upset after exam results, or particularly in 5th year, being upset because I maybe didn't get put in the front row for a dance or something silly, because I would compare myself to other people. And I remember my mom or my dad sitting me down and saying, you know, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get there in the future. You know, they're different to you. You can do things better in other areas, and you need to remember what you're good at and stop comparing to other people. And I was told that from when I was 15, 16, but it was very hard to believe. And I think I wish I could go back now and tell myself to just freaking believe it. Stop comparing yourself to other people, because it took hitting such lows along the way to finally get to where I am now, to say, okay, I'm not comparing myself to anyone else.
Yeah, I've been there. I love the Benjamin Franklin quote that experience is a costly school, but fools will learn in no other. I feel I resonate so much with that, because I'm like, I had to make all the mistakes myself.
You do.
Well,
hopefully you don't.
You don't.
Learn from our mistakes.
100%. You don't, and that's something that I've consciously, not mindlessly, been doing over the last several years. I'm like, well, I will learn vicariously through other people's mistakes.
And that's why it's so important to listen to the likes of all these podcasts and follow other journeys, and like learn from their mistakes before you make them. Well, you
have to learn from mistakes, but no one said they had to be your mistakes.
100%.
I love it. Nathalie, this has been awesome. Tell everybody, where is the best place to find out more about you? Hopefully we'll get a part 2 in at some stage next time you're down. But tell everybody, where's the best place to reach out to you, connect with you? I'll put all the links up in the show notes. But tell everybody listening now, where's the best place to connect?
So if you want to actually message me about anything, or connect with me about something in particular, email is going to be the number one way. So that is Nathalie Fitness, Nattilly is how I spell it, at gmail.com. Emails are probably the method of messaging that I get back to most. After that, if you want to follow my journey a little bit more and connect with me just like from time to time, Instagram is my number one social media platform. So I'll keep going there with my own story, my own tips and tricks. That's at Nat_Tilly, Tilly. And I'm trying to get more in this YouTube train, struggling, but I also have a video up there about obsessions and passions if anyone wants to have a listen. So you can check out my channel there. They're the number one ways that anyone can reach me. I have a website that is getting there in terms of recipes and a few blog pieces. So that's Nathalie.
Is that live?
It's live, yeah.
What's the
It's natalielennon.ie.
Love it.
Yeah.
Nathalie, thank you so much, everybody. I'll be linking those in the show notes, briankeanefitness.com. You can get her Instagram. I'll link the website. I'll link the email. The whole lot is there. Nathalie, thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me. It was great to be here.
Quick message before you head off. Just letting you know my best-selling book, The Fitness Mindset, is now available on Audible and all major audiobook apps. If you're like me and love listening to books while you travel or work out, be sure to go to audible.co.uk or audible.com to check out the audio version of The Fitness Mindset. You can listen to a 3-minute sample on there, or you can download the full book. Also, last thing before you leave, if you try Clean Cut Meals, the sponsors of today's episode, be sure to enter the code BKF at the checkout to get your 20% off your first order. Clean Cut Meals are doing all my food for my next adventure challenge coming early next year. I'll be announcing more about that during next month's podcast, and I'm just waiting actually on medical clearance. Ugh, yikes. So stay tuned for that, and remember, code BKF at the checkout for 20% off your first order. Catch you all next week.